All right, this is DJ Swagger Lee filling in for David Hawkins of DHI Enterprises at The David Show on Instagram. So he wanted to wish you guys a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and a crazy Kwanzaa and all that. And in the meantime, I will be filling in for him as I talk about these two DJ controllers. First and foremost, I wanted to take time out to let everybody know that if you have a Serato controller, Serato now has 50% off of their Serato DJ software. So now you can get this software for only $64.50 if you head over to Serato.com. Now there'll be a link in the description below for you to get it at that price. Now, that said, these are two entry-level controllers. Over here on the left, we have the DDJ-RB, which is made by Pioneer, which is the most popular DJ brand. This particular unit runs the all-new recordbox DJ software, which comes with the unit. Over here, we have the Reloop Beatmix 2 Mach 2 controller, which is a Serato controller. Now, Reloop doesn't really have that big of a name outside of the hardcore DJ community. Reloop is a German company, and it's based out of Münster, Germany. And, if you're a DJ, like DJ Jazzy Jeff or any number of famous DJs would be familiar with the Reloop brand. And I'll have a link to them in the description below as well. So the two main differences are this controller comes with recordbox DJ. This controller comes with absolutely nothing, but it's a Serato controller, so you can download Serato DJ Intro for free. And that's sort of like an entry-level trial kind of software, which a lot of these controllers come with. Like the DDJ-RB is the rare controller that actually comes with the full version of the software. Now, an important difference that not a lot of people talk about is that this unit here, the Reloop Beatmix 2 Mach 2, is core audio compliant. And what that means is, you can run this without installing any drivers at all. You just plug it into your Mac and it runs automatically. If you're on a Macintosh, all you have to do is plug it in and it'll start running. I'm not sure about Windows because I don't really have a Windows laptop anymore to test it on, but I can tell you with all certainty that if you just plug it into a Macintosh computer, it will show up as a core audio device. Now, the DDJ-RB is a little bit different. You have to install the audio driver. Of course, it's automatically recognized as a MIDI device, but you have to install the audio driver and you have to install recordbox, and then there's a different driver for recordbox. So you have to go through a few things. Like this is about as close as you can get to plug and play. You plug this in, you start off Serato DJ, and you can already start mixing. This you have to go and set up the drivers and all that before you can really do anything. So it's one of the key differences between the two. Now, the obvious difference that you'll see right here are the decks. The Reloop Beatmix 2 Mach 2 has much bigger, nicer jog wheels. I mean, these are nice. That's actual metal on top of there, and it's got a really smooth feel to it. This is an obvious plastic thing here. It's smaller, and it's not as good. That's obvious. You can see that. So that's the first difference, but the next is the pad selectors. Basically, what you can see here is that you have 4 selectors for the pads on the DDJ-RB. Here you just have 3, so for here you can go, you basically wind up with 8 choices here. So you have hot cue, pad effects 1, slicer, sampler, and then if you hold down shift, you have beat jump, pad effects 2, slicer loop, and the sequence call. Not sure what that is, but so basically what that means is you have 8 different banks of 8 different buttons, giving you a total of 64 programmable buttons. Here you just have pad mode A and pad mode B, and if you press these together, you have a split mode. So that's basically 3 banks, which gives you a total of 24 performance buttons. So you have 24 buttons compared to 24 pads, sorry. So you have 24 pads compared to a total of 64 pads, and that's basically all you have to work with these 2 units. Now, looking at the 2 top sections here, these bottom 2 knobs here are filters, And, so that's basically an effect. So you might as well move this up here. And once you do that, the only remaining difference is here, there's a separate knob for the headphones and for the Q mix. Here, you only have one master level and a level knob for either Q or the headphones, but you have to like toggle it with this button here. So here you definitely have an extra knob. Other than that, it's identical. So what you wind up with is if you move the filter buttons, one here and one here, then you have two effects on each side, and everything else is identical. You've got your gain, high, mid, and low. Gain, high, mid, and low. And yeah, so it's pretty much identical except for the fact that like the headphone button is then missing from there. And so what else do we have here? The other thing is, okay, so let's say you're counting the low pass, high pass filter. You can set up any of these effects like, any way you want. These are all programmable effects here, and you can set them up however you want. You can set up one of these to be the low pass, high pass filter. By default, I think it's low pass, high pass, and then there's another one for by default it's low pass, high pass, and there's another one for delay or echo. Whereas on this side, like you can only have one effect active at a time. Like holding down the shift button and hitting select will allow you to switch to a different effect, but as soon as you do that, the current effect turns off, and then you are switched to another effect which is also turned off and won't be turned on until you release the shift button and press the on button. So that's something to think about. The other unique thing about the Pioneer unit is that you can use all 8 of these pads. So you can have 8 hot cues, you can have 8 samplers, you can use all 8 of these pads, whereas like with the Serato unit, you're left between, you can only use 4 and 4. It's usually split functions. For example, the top 4 of these will be hot cues and the bottom 4 will control your auto loops. Or you can like switch it so that the top 4 are samples and the bottom 4 turn off the samples. Or you can switch it so that the top 4 are hot cues and the bottom 4 are samples. So those are basically your options. You can't really use all 8 unless of course you reprogram the MIDI, which you can do in Serato and you can do in Tractor and you can do in recordbox. Because the other thing is you can also use both of these units in recordbox. You of course can't use the DDJ-RB in Serato, but you can use this in Serato, recordbox, or Tractor if you want, or virtual DJ if you want. You can use this with just about anything. This one you can only use with recordbox and I guess Tractor. I think I've tried to use this with Tractor, so you can use it with both of those. Now, another big difference is like the pads are much bigger than the pads on the DDJ-RB. Now that's not as big of a problem as you might think because they're equally as comfortable, I think, in terms of pressing them. I mean, I think the Reloop might require a little bit less pressure, but basically the pads are like bigger, but they feel just about the same. So if you like the bigger pads, which I do, then you might be leaning more towards this unit. Now, some things that the Pioneer definitely doesn't have that the Serato does is like the Pioneer has these really small, like, sort of insulting pitch faders. Just to give you an idea, the pitch faders on the Pioneer are exactly half the size of the pitch faders on the Reloop. So, and the other thing is like when this is on, the Reloop pitch faders have a little blue light so that you can tell when you're in the dark whether or not the pitch fader is set in the middle position or not. And also like, there's also like the pitch buttons, a plus and minus pitch button on the Beatmix 2, and those buttons don't exist at all on the Pioneer DDJ-RB. So that's something to think about. Like, so basically the things that you're giving up, you get the use of all 8 performance pads for whatever you want to do on the Pioneer, but you're losing out on a really good tempo fader and you're missing out on the 2 like pitch control buttons. So, this is not very useful at all. So, and the other thing, of course, is the effects, because you only have 1 effect on it at a time here. And here you can control 3 effects at a time on the Beatmix 2. And the other thing about the Beatmix 2 is that you can switch just by holding down the shift button and turning the knob. It allows you to switch the effect, and you have to hold the shift button and press through all your effects like one at a time with this. So it's much slower to select the one effect that you can use in the DDJ-RB. So, your preference really depends on what kind of DJ you are. If you're a performance DJ and you know you're going to use a lot of pads, a lot of hot cues, then the DDJ-RB might make a lot of sense. Whereas, like, if you know you're going to be using effects more and you're going to be changing the tempo and beat matching a lot more, then the Beatmix 2 Mach 2 might make a lot more sense. But the thing that you have to remember is that both of these controllers are MIDI compliant. And while that's true, you can't add more buttons to the DDJ-RB. The Serato, the Beatmix 2 Mach 2 clearly has more knobs and more buttons available. So you can just go in to recordbox. You can use the Beatmix 2 Mach 2 and you can program it so that you can use all 8 buttons as hot cues or all 8 buttons as samplers. All you have to do is do the MIDI mapping and set it up, and it'll work exactly the same as the DDJ-RB would be. And the exception is that the DDJ-RB, you just don't have as many buttons to work with. And the other important thing to note here is that it only comes with a mini headphone jack. It does not come with a 1/4-inch headphone jack, whereas the Beatmix 2 Mach 2 comes with both a mini and a 1/4-inch headphone jack. And it also has the microphone input in the front. Some might like it in the front. In the DDJ-RB, it's in the back, so it all depends. So basically, a lot of it boils down to what kind of DJ you are. And when it comes to preference, I would have to say that I prefer the Beatmix 2 Mach 2. It gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of like what you can do and how you can do it. And once you reprogram it, then some of its negatives wind up not being that big of a deal. Oh, and the other thing is that by default, the DDJ-RB has a manual loop, this loop in and out here, but it doesn't have any auto loop function. This one has an auto loop function, but it has no manual loop function. And of course, this has slicer and slicer loop, but of course you can program those to work with the Beatmix 2 Mach 2. So I just wanted to give an overview of these two because not a lot of people in the States or outside of Europe have really heard of Reloop, unless they're like really high-end professional DJs that have specifically looked for Reloop. So I just wanted to talk about it because I couldn't find any other reviews in English about the Beatmix 2 Mach 2. So this is just a brief thing. Again, this has been DJ Swagger Lee filling in for David Hawkins of DHI Enterprises at The David Show on Instagram. And we will see you after the new year. Happy New Year.